AJ and I and the team at Abroaders are developing a course for Udemy. It's going to be a comprehensive course on earning and redeeming miles, managing your credit for sustainable long-term world travel. Everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric, checking in with you guys from Grand Ledge, Michigan, USA. I'm actually going to be getting on a flight tomorrow morning and heading back to Salvador, Brazil. Pretty excited about this one. I'm flying direct Detroit to Miami and Miami to Salvador. Pretty much the most direct flight that is available, and it's in economy, so I'm definitely glad not to be sitting on the plane any longer than I need to. But just wanted to remind you guys that Brazil is still at the saver level. Off-peak pricing is $20,000 one way, so it's a great deal, and I think I paid about $50 in taxes and fees. We've got a great episode for you guys today. We're going to be talking a little bit later on about a new course that we're launching for do-it-yourselfers, including an opportunity to pre-register and be able to get some extra benefits that are not going to be available to the general public. And then also we're going to be covering getting premium class award seats. So business and first class awards with a special focus on those seats to Europe this summer. Obviously, summer is high season for Europe. It's a time everybody's trying to get there, and it's even harder to find those business and first class seats. But a couple weeks ago at the Frequent Traveler University, I picked up a ton of inside knowledge, some great inside baseball from some of the top minds in the points and miles world, and uncovered some gems of availability. And so I want to share those trends with you guys today in hopes that you can turn those into a awesome business class or first class adventure to somewhere beautiful in Europe this summer. You can find show notes for today's episode at abroaders.com/fly premium. So today, AJ is checking in from Sao Paulo, Brazil. We really wanted to do a joint episode for today, but because of some internet issues and a pretty loud cafe environment, we didn't want to bash your guys' ears with a whole bunch of background noise. So we're going to do this sort of like a headline news format with me taking the anchor position and AJ checking in. How's it going, man? Give us some updates from Sao Paulo.
Yeah, so each time that I come to São Paulo, I think I like it a little bit more, and I think it's just because it's a city that's very, very difficult to navigate by yourself, and even if you have some local knowledge, it's just so big and it's so populated that, you know, the person that you're talking to, even if they've lived there all their life, you kind of get quarantined into your own kind of section of the city or your neighborhood or the surrounding neighborhoods. And where I'm staying now is a little bit different than where I've stayed before. I'm actually staying in Moema. So it's a few neighborhoods south and maybe a neighborhood or two west of the actual city center. And just each time I come here, there's just more and more to do and more to offer. And you kind of start to realize that each neighborhood, you know, has kind of its own thing and has really, really, really cool things to offer. And there's so many neighborhoods and it's so big. And the city can be a little bit difficult to navigate. Or if you were trying to take a taxi, it can over time get a little bit expensive. But this is definitely one of the cities that I would definitely recommend going to and really digging deep in picking a neighborhood that you think would kind of strike your fancy for starters, and then just kind of explore neighborhood to neighborhood because each neighborhood has so much cool stuff. It is a concrete jungle, but they do have a couple massive parks that are really, really cool, really fun, all sorts of people there. And, you know, the one more thing is even a lot of Brazilians don't like São Paulo because they just say, oh, it's concrete jungle. It's really big. It's, you know, there's some safety issues. I know so many of my friends from Rio don't like São Paulo, but I guarantee it's because they just haven't really given it a proper chance. So if you are somebody that frequents Brazil or you would like to get to know Brazil, I would definitely give São Paulo a chance, and also keep in mind that you're going to build equity each time you're in the city, and you're going to come back and see new things each time. Where, you know, a city like Rio is a big city and it's really cool, but it's much less that. Like every time I know the city much better in Rio, and there's you know fewer surprises. You can always find gems. It's a big city, but I feel like São Paulo is kind of that essence on steroids.
one of the things I absolutely love about big cities like New York, Sao Paulo, London, Berlin, all these places have a critical mass of entrepreneurship and people doing exciting things. And that's, I love being home. It's been a great week here. But, when you're in a town of 30,000 people, you just don't have the same potential to meet people and create opportunities for yourself. And that's one of the reasons why we think travel is so important to be able to, for personal development and business development. So AJ had a pretty interesting experience meeting some kind of ballers in Sao Paulo that are connected with Vice Brazil. Tell us about that, man. What did you find? Who did you meet?
Yeah, so I met some extremely interesting and eccentric people. It would have been this past Thursday. I was just at a cafe getting some work done, and then this group came in and they're kind of being a little bit loud. And at the beginning, I thought they're a tad obnoxious. Ended up not being the case at all. They sat down next to me, and they're pretty loud. And the guy turns over to me and says, "Hey, man, if we're being too loud." And this, by the way, this is in perfect English, so I knew he most likely wasn't Brazilian. He goes, "Hey, man, if we're being too loud, just let me know. We're really excited about this event we're going to. Oh, by the way, what are you working on?" Because he kind of took a look at my screen and I think he saw some spreadsheets of mileage currencies and savings, and it just kind of looked weird to him. So I kind of gave him the quick elevator pitch on who we are and what we do. And he's like, "No way, man. Well, I could use your help." And the guy really didn't necessarily know exactly what we did because it's kind of difficult to explain award travel to a non-U.S. citizen. But nonetheless, he was under the impression that Erik and I were just experts in all sorts of flights. And so who this guy was is he's a very well-known artist from South Africa, and he was going to Venice to some art expo, and he was there with this team, and they're kind of planning how they're going to, get the travel logistics set up and what they're going to do once they're there. There's a professional surfer, or he used to be a pro surfer. He's retired now. Don't exactly know what he was going to do at the art expo, but nonetheless, he's a really cool dude. There's a girl with an up-and-coming rock band here in Sao Paulo, and then the videographer was going to go there and capture it all. And so I kind of got to know these people, and the conversation just kept on going layers and layers deeper. And this guy was actually, he was in Sao Paulo to meet with the president of Vice Brazil, and he's like, "Hey, man, I'm going to be meeting up with Tony later. If you guys want to, if you want to join for a beer or something, I'll let you know." So I'm like, "Oh, wow, that'd be cool," because I'm a huge fan of Vice. I absolutely love what they do. I think it's really cool. I think it's, some of the more honest journalism out there on the web, and they cover really unique things. So met with these folks, got to know them, went back to the apartment I'm staying at, kind of chilled out, and ended up going up and meeting with these people a little bit later. Ended up just meeting or just missing the Vice guy. He had to head out of town, but hopefully can get in contact with him sometime in the near future. But just kind of a stark reminder that nothing good, happens when you stay in your hotel room or you stay in your apartment. When you get out and about, go to a cafe, go to a co-working space, there's always the possibility that you meet really, really interesting people. And I know that you want to chat about Tomorrowland in a little bit, but kind of the same idea. Good things can obviously happen in the hotel room or apartment, but as far as meeting interesting people, nothing good happens to stay in yourself. Just be open to conversations, get out and about, and don't be shy.
So the next thing I wanted to ask AJ, I got to say I'm a little bit jealous. He went to Tomorrowland in Sao Paulo. Now, Tomorrowland is a festival, electronic music festival that started in Belgium, and now they've got a couple of different locations. And AJ went to check that out. Can you give everybody who isn't familiar just a quick overview of what Tomorrowland is?
So like you said, yeah, Tomorrowland is a really big electronic music festival, but the one thing that I would say to people there before I lose their interest, if they think EDM is stupid or they just don't like that type of music, is view it kind of almost like the World Cup. View it as a major event where there's going to be people from everywhere, and there's going to be all sorts of interesting people that you can have fun with, you can meet, make contacts, make new friends. I think back to the World Cup, and there's so many people at the World Cup that really didn't know anything about football. A lot of the Americans that were there obviously didn't know much about football, and that's fine because it's just not as popular, in the U.S. But even I would challenge you, if you enjoy, having a good time, a little bit of party and meeting people, I would definitely challenge you, if you have the means to do it, it is definitely worthwhile. There's people from so many different countries that come there and kind of make that pilgrimage to the mecca of electronic music. And I think there's probably people from maybe, 20 different countries I met. And I was kind of hanging out with the group too the whole time. So I wasn't being super social, just wandering around and meeting people. But I was there with a couple Colombians and a Brazilian, and it was a really good time. Met people from virtually every continent of the world. So definitely look into it, look into the dates. It is now in, I believe, Atlanta. It's this past year is in São Paulo, the state of São Paulo, Brazil, but in a smaller city called Itu. And then the original festival is in Boone, Belgium. And I don't know the exact dates for next year and all the other circuits, but they just released the dates for Brazil. And I believe it's April 21st through April 23rd. And if you do like EDM, they've got some really big acts there. Every day was different. I went on Friday, and some of the more notable names would be Afrojack was there, Hardwell was there, Steve Aoki finished, and he was just insane. It was pretty entertaining to see.
Man, that sounds really cool. We've obviously reported on this show on a couple of other sort of party circuit events. AJ and I were lucky enough to attend Oktoberfest in Munich, Germany. We also spent about a month in Brazil this year for the World Cup. I'm really curious. Tell me about what the actual experience was like at Tomorrowland.
Yeah, so the one word of the wise, and also this was the first time they did it in Brazil, so there's some logistical issues, I think, just it being the first time, but I would definitely warn people if they're going to go. I don't know what to expect in Belgium or in the U.S., but definitely be ready to take care of yourself. Definitely bring any supplies needed. It is a little bit tricky because they won't let you necessarily bring in water or drinks, but I would definitely challenge you to smuggle in some drinks and some water. And here's why. They had a big water shortage near the end of the night, which is, as you can only imagine, just so dangerous. You got people jumping up and around, dancing for like 10 hours, a lot of people drinking a lot. And then there's obviously the subset of people using drugs, and just not very safe to not have water there. And at the end of the night, all we wanted was water. And we had money, and we couldn't even buy water. So that was really frustrating. We also had a kind of funky issue happen with a couple of the girls in our group. They went missing, and we were a little bit concerned about them. And nobody, and I mean nobody, wanted to help. And one of the things was an organizational thing. This is not a slam on Brazil, because it was not a Brazil problem. It was a Tomorrowland problem. I actually met with one of the organizers of the event, one of the kind of the head honchos that was actually there, and he quite literally just told me, this is not my problem, this is your problem. You should have stayed together. You can file a missing persons report tomorrow. So that was a little bit frustrating, and we ended up kind of breaking some rules to make sure that everyone ended up being safe, because no one would help us. But definitely, if you do go, plan on taking care of yourself, show up hydrated, because there may be a water shortage. God knows how they ran out of water on the first day of the festival when they had still 2 more full days left. But definitely, I would recommend going, but also go there prepared to take care of yourself and take care of the people you're in a group with, because really no one there had any interest in helping us with anything. And it was a fairly dire situation at the time.
Wow, man, that sounds incredible. I am definitely going to have to put Tomorrowland on my list of events to check out. Maybe in Sao Paulo, or, definitely would be cool to check out the original in Belgium. Alrighty, so time to jump into the meat of the episode. Before we dive into some of the tips that I want to share today about finding business and first class award seats, I want to share one announcement with you guys and a tool as well that I recently discovered, and I think will bring you guys a lot of value. So first of all, AJ and I and the team at Abroaders are developing a course for Udemy. It's going to be a comprehensive course on earning and redeeming miles, managing your credit for sustainable long-term world travel. And we've put a ton of time and energy into this. We're easily 150 hours in, and the course is shaping up to be a truly awesome resource. I'm really proud of the work that everybody's put in so far, and I can't wait to release this to you guys. And so I thought it might be cool to highlight some of the modules of the course. So far, we've got about 10 or 11 modules outlined and a lot of the episodes produced. And so I wanted to give you guys some valuable info from one of the first modules here and sort of a small preview of what you'll learn in the course. And if we continue to get good feedback, we'll keep doing this each week, because I think not only is it helpful information, but I'm also learning new things as we're building out the course and doing research. There's things that I didn't even know about credit that I've come across now, and we're including into the lesson plan. So today I want to recap quickly the main factors that impact your credit score. And those are going to be on-time payments, by far the most important, how you utilize your existing credit, the average age and the age of your oldest account. So sort of a measure of the history of your creditworthiness. If you have a longer credit history, you've got a better likelihood of being able to repay. Diversity of accounts, and then also any derogatory marks or anything like that you have on your credit. So we've also shared in the past quite a few resources on how to access your credit report. There's a government website called annualcreditreport.com that gives you access once a year for free to all 3 of your credit reports from the 3 major credit bureaus. There's also a great free website called creditkarma.com that gives you access to 2 out of the 3 credit reports and also gives you an estimate of your FICO score. And your FICO score is a 3-digit number between 350 and 850, and the banks use that to sort of get an overall picture of your creditworthiness. And so Credit Karma doesn't actually give you the FICO score because that's actually owned by the company FICO, but they give you a really nice estimate, and it helps you to sort of track positives and negatives against your overall credit performance and your credit health. So one kind of important thing to recap, and we get a lot of questions about this. So when you open a new account, a lot of people are hesitant to do that. They're afraid that opening a bunch of new accounts is going to hurt their score. And so the main thing that happens, the most important factor, is that when you open a new account, you generally get a new credit line. And so that's going to help your overall utilization, which is 30% of your total score. The thing that does happen when you open a new account that's a negative is that you're also going to reduce the average age of your accounts. So that is the downside. And you also get a small ding for the credit inquiry. So when you look for credit, the banks see that as a potential risk indicator. But overall, opening a new account is generally a net positive. On the other hand, when you close accounts, you want to be very careful to try and save that credit line because, again, if you close out an account that has an $8,000 credit line, you're losing that part of your available credit, and it's going to hurt your overall utilization. So you want to be careful about that, and there's some tips that we share in the course and that we've talked about on the show before that can help you to sort of mitigate that damage and salvage that credit line. And there's also ways that you can turn your account into a no-fee account, or also did you get that fee waived through negotiation. So check out some of the archives of our past episodes if you want to get more details about that. The new piece of information that I learned more about and I really wanted to share with you guys is about how to manage disputes with the credit bureaus when some of the information on your report may be incorrect. So that's one of the big things that you can do to improve your credit score. We've also talked in the past about getting secured credit cards. Those are ways to build a credit history if you don't have much of one, or getting added to someone's account that has excellent credit. They can add you as an additional card holder, and that should give you a big boost. Maybe not huge, but it definitely helps, and it's worth doing if you've got somebody that you trust that has good credit that's willing to take out another card in your name. You don't even have to use that card. They can just keep it in a drawer somewhere, and their good credit is just going to leak over into your credit report. So the big thing I wanted to cover today is about disputing errors on your credit report, because you have a right to dispute inaccurate information. And all 3 bureaus have an online dispute process, and we're going to link to those in the show notes. So if you do see something when you check your report that doesn't look right, you can contact the credit bureaus and try and get that information wiped off your report. And when that happens, you're going to see a big boost. The 2 things that I didn't know about that are really valuable tips, I kind of found out about some of this as we were researching for this section of the course, is that if you've ever had a payment sent to a collections agency, you may be able to negotiate with them to delete the record from your credit report in return for paying the full amount owed or a percentage, some sort of settlement. And the reason that this works is because collection agencies, basically, they pay whoever you owe an amount of money to take on the collection responsibility for that debt. And so if you pay them, they're going to win. And so they really want you to pay. But they also are in a position of control where they can ask the credit bureaus to wipe that off your report. And if you don't know about this, a lot of times if you pay that bill, the collections bureau will just mark the debt as paid, and it's going to stay on your report for 7 years. So you can actually send them a pay for delete letter, which essentially is that transaction that says, I will pay this bill. I'm not necessarily admitting responsibility, but I'm going to settle this, and if I do that, you have to wipe this off my report. And so that was something I didn't know about, and that's a really great tip if you do have one or two nasty collections from far back. The other thing that I learned about is that it's possible to also submit a goodwill request for removal of late payments. And so the way that this works is you request directly with the creditor that they remove a late payment from your credit report. And this typically is more likely to work if you experience an unexpected financial hardship, if you have some sort of reason, and also if you have a good payment history otherwise with that creditor, you have a higher chance of getting this to work. But it's really simple. You can find templates online, and we're also going to be including a bunch of template letters in the course. And those types of things, it's worth a try. You send out a letter, you spend 15 minutes drafting up a template letter, and you're going to be able to send that out to the creditor, and maybe they'll just ask the credit agency to wipe that off your report. A lot of times that does work out. And we've actually, in our interviews and sort of research for this, come across quite a few positive anecdotes of people being able to get this resolved. So hopefully that helps you guys out. If any of you have, something that's just holding your credit score down, keeping you from getting into that 660, 670 and above range where it starts to become much easier to be able to get rewards credit cards and in turn be able to leverage your everyday regular spending and turn it into awesome travel experiences. So as I said before, we are definitely going to get a launch date figured out pretty soon for this course. We haven't totally figured out pricing, but we really want to get some of you guys to test this course out and give us feedback as soon as it's ready. So we're going to do a soft launch just for the listeners of the podcast and our audience on the website. And if you want to get early access to the course, you can pre-register at abroaders.com/learn. And we're definitely going to be throwing in bonus materials that are not going to be available to the public with the regular course, and possibly even a personalized consultation for those of you who do pre-register. So if you want to get in on that, there's definitely going to be a limited number of the consultations. So hop over to the website, abroaders.com/learn, pre-register for the Udemy course. Don't have to pay anything or anything like that. We just want to get a list of people that are interested. So we've got some folks that can test out the course and let us know what parts, we need to improve, what information or what other questions we can answer to help make your lives easier. The next thing I wanted to share with you guys is an awesome mobile tool that I've been using and absolutely loving. You probably know that you can get lounge access in a couple of different ways. One of them is by flying premium cabin, so business or first class, and you can achieve that either by paying a lot of money for those tickets or by redeeming points using award tickets to get those seats. The next way that you can get lounge access is with elite status. If you fly a lot with a particular airline, you can gain elite status and potentially have access to their lounges. Although some airlines, the American US carriers, are a little more stingy about the lounge access, and you have to be flying internationally to be able to take advantage sometimes of those lounge benefits, or you have to be the absolute top elite. So we're going to talk about some of the hacks to get around that, but this app does all the work for you. So the third thing that it keeps track of is you can get lounge access through credit cards that offer access. So some of them, like the Amex Platinum card, you just present your card to the lounge and they're going to let you in, or the City Executive Advantage card, that one you can get into Admirals clubs. Other cards like the United Explorer from Chase just give you a couple of passes to use per year. And then the last way you can get lounge access is by purchasing access. Not all lounges do it, but a lot of times you can get a day pass. So the app is called Lounge Buddy, and it stores your elite status and all of your credit cards and will tell you if you have access on the day of travel. It's important. You can also put your trip into the application, tell them which airlines you're flying and which airports you're stopping, and that'll give you even more information. It'll tell you whether you have access based on who you're flying with. And I'll tell you, there are some very complex rules related to what airline you're flying. So even with the right credit card, you might not be able to get into the lounges you think you can. And this app takes all the thinking out of it and just tells you exactly what airline lounges you have access to. So you can take a load off, get some Wi-Fi, get a free drink, get some free food. The app does all the work for you, and it's a beautiful app. It's a great interface. So I highly recommend you guys check this out. If you don't have lounge access, the Lounge Buddy application will also let you buy a day pass for a whole bunch of different lounges right from your phone. I've reached out to my buddy Brent at Lounge Buddy. He's one of the marketing directors, and hopefully we'll be able to get you guys a discount on your first purchase. I haven't haven't heard back from him yet, and so I'm not sure exactly what that's going to be, but I know they have some promotions like that, and we'll have details on what the deal is in the show notes. But I didn't want to wait to share this until we get a response and get a link for you guys. I'm not worried about getting affiliate commissions. I just want you guys to check this app out. So if you hop over to the show notes, you're going to be able to find the link for that sign up. And if we do have a promotion for you where you're going to save some money, we'll have those details in there as well. Okay, so last week we aired an interview with Carrie from Heels First Travel that I recorded at Frequent Traveler University, which is a meetup of some of the best bloggers and experts in the points and miles industry. And I definitely encourage you guys to take a look at that interview and the previous one with Seth from Wandering Aramean. If you haven't heard those two yet, they're packed with some really interesting content and some cool travel stories. I learned a ton at this event, and it's probably going to take a little bit of time for me to be able to work all of the information that I learned there into the show and into our content on the site. But today I want to run through a special segment on one of the more time-sensitive pieces of new information that I got about trends in availability for premium cabin tickets. So we get asked this all the time. What is the best time to book a premium award ticket? Business class, first class. We know that there's not that many seats that are those upfront nice seats on every plane. There's 300 in coach and just maybe 30 to 50 business, and sometimes as few as 6 first class seats. So the availability is definitely limited. And the answer to when you should book and with what airlines and what points depends quite a bit on who you want to fly and where you want to fly. So in general, some airplanes are really good about opening up award space when the schedule opens. So typically that's between 10 and 12 months out. One thing that you should understand about how the airlines load schedules. So there's 2 separate components to this. The first is when the airline itself loads the schedule. So American Airlines loads their schedule 355 days in advance. And that means that they're loading which flights are going to operate, what type of aircraft, and then they know which seats are going to be available, and they start to sell those seats. The programs sometimes load award availability different. So if you think about it, American Airlines, the airline that's operating those flights, has a ton of partners in one world. And so if you have British Airways Avios points, you can still book a seat on American Airlines, book that first class seat. But sometimes the programs don't match up in the time that they load the award availability. So British Airways might only let you book 330 days out instead of 355. And so American's got those seats up for sale, but the award program's not going to let you book. A concrete example of this is actually Air France. The airline Air France loads their schedule 330 days out, but their frequent flyer program, Flying Blue, only loads availability 300 days out. So there's a full 30 days that members of Air France's own frequent flyer program can't book award seats with their miles, and that obviously includes those very limited first and business class seats. Even more ridiculous, Delta SkyMiles, which is a program that partners with Air France, loads award program tickets 330 days out. So this actually means that if you have Delta SkyMiles, you can book a seat on an Air France flight 30 days before a person with Air France Flying Blue Miles can book the same seat. So Air their program is handicapping their own members, and partner airlines have access to those seats before Flying Blue members have. So that's a really interesting dynamic, and that does happen from time to time, just depending on when airlines load their schedules and when award programs load availability for those award seats. So keep that in mind, and I'm going to jump into some real-world opportunities, some current trends that were discussed at the Frequent Traveler University event by some of the best experts in points and miles. These guys know their stuff, and I went and verified some of this information, and where they told me to look, there was a lot of seats. Okay, so one of the airlines that I learned has some really big opportunities 11 months out, especially for first class, is Japan Airlines. They're really good about opening up at least 1, sometimes 2 first class seats and quite a few business class seats all the way out when the schedule opens. They're also very good at opening seats right before departure. And so the way this works is the airlines are managing that inventory. And so they know that, if they realize that they're not going to sell all the seats, they'll start opening those up to people who want to use points so that they can get the points off the books. Cathay Pacific is kind of an interesting contrast. They don't really open up very many first class seats in advance. So when the schedule opens, At best, you're going to see one first class seat. They used to do two, but nowadays one is the best it's going to get. So if you're trying to fly with somebody else, you maybe want to look at Japan Airlines instead of Cathay Pacific if you're flying across the Pacific Ocean. On the other hand, Cathay Pacific does a great job of opening up all but one of their first class seats 1 to 3 days before departure. Obviously, it takes kind of a special lifestyle to not have any plans and be able to pick up and travel within a couple of days across the ocean to Asia, but it is really valuable to know, especially if you're trying to book with somebody else. And there is a strategy here that lets you confirm a seat and still look for that last minute first class upgrade. So what you should do if you want to fly premium on Cathay Pacific is book their business class 11 months out. You shouldn't have too much trouble finding 2 business class seats, and so you and your travel companion can get on that flight. Cathay Pacific has an amazing business class, so you're going to be in great hands anyways. And then look carefully a couple of days before departure and see if those first class seats open up. And so, by the way, it's also free to do this if you happen to be using American Airlines miles. So unlike some programs that charge you a change fee when you try and upgrade right before departure, American doesn't do that. So as long as it's an upgrade, as long as you're going from economy to business or business to first, you're going to be able to make that change for free. So you just book your business class seats as far out as you can, then you wait, and the last couple of days you look for those first class seats and give American a call, and you can upgrade for the difference in miles and if there's any difference in taxes, which is usually pretty negligible. The next airline I wanted to discuss that came up quite a bit at the Frequent Traveler event was Singapore Airlines. So Singapore is pretty hopeless in terms of booking premium seats with Star Alliance partner miles. So if you have United miles or you have Air Canada miles, both of those are relatively easy to come by with credit cards. You're not going to have a very good shot at getting business and first class seats on Singapore. But availability is much better with Singapore KrisFlyer miles. And fortunately, KrisFlyer miles are transfer partners of all 4 transferable currencies. So Starwood Preferred Guest, Amex, Chase, and Citi Thank You all transfer to Singapore. They're actually the only airline, I think, that has all 4 of the major transferable currencies. And so that's a really nice thing to know. You are going to pay some fuel surcharges with those Singapore seats, but paying, $300 for a round trip in business or first class is a pretty good deal for most people. So definitely consider that. If you're looking at flying to Asia and it's on a route that Singapore operates, keep in mind that you're not going to be able to necessarily get those seats with United miles. But, that's a great example. If you have Chase points, instead of transferring to United, transfer those points to Singapore, and you're going to have a whole bunch more seats available. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about is getting to Europe. It is just about to be summer in Europe, and lots of people want to spend some miles on a premium class ticket across the Atlantic Ocean. And so I wanted to talk about some highlights of business class availability. So one of the gems out there is Toronto to Brussels. There are usually at least 2 business class seats. They're just not as common of an airline, and so that route is really good. And remember, you can position to Toronto, maybe end up getting stuck in coach on that, but you can use United to get to Toronto or Air Canada to get to Toronto from wherever you're actually departing from in the US, and then book on Brussels airline across the Atlantic Ocean and get a really nice 8 to 10 hour flight into Europe. So that's a really nice way to do it. There's also some availability from Newark to Brussels, but it's not as good as the Toronto route. So if you can't find it from Newark, Toronto might be a good alternative. The next one is Lufthansa. Now, they have an incredible first and business class product. I flew Lufthansa business class back from Barcelona last year to come home for my sister's birthday, and it was an incredibly nice experience. I did that with United miles, and I did it a couple of weeks before departure. And basically, Lufthansa doesn't open up much space to their partners, their Star Alliance partners, in advance. So same situation as with Singapore, but they do open up a lot of space, a lot of premium cabin space to their own members. So it's harder to get Lufthansa miles. They don't have any major transfer partners, so you got to earn those miles by flying a Star Alliance airline, or you can get them by the Miles and More card from Barclays, but generally that's not going to be enough points to get a premium cabin ticket. So if you don't have a pile of Lufthansa miles sitting in the bank, then the best way to do it is to wait until a couple of weeks before departure and try and upgrade. Next, let's talk a little bit about oneworld to Europe. So this is going to be airlines like Iberia, American, British Airways, Air Berlin, and Finnish Air. And so the best one that people were talking about nonstop was Air Berlin. They've got a route from Berlin to JFK and to Chicago. And one of the really awesome tips that came out of this discussion at the event was how to weed out that British Airways availability when you're looking at the American Airlines site. So American's website is awesome for showing availability just because you can look at a whole calendar. You can see an entire month of availability on one screen. And that's a really nice benefit because with BA's search, you have to click one by one by one and click on every date. And every time you see a new date, you have to reload the page. So it takes forever. American's awesome, but they're polluted with British Airways flights. And every one of those British Airways premium cabin flights is going to cost you at least $600, maybe $1,000 round trip because of the fuel surcharges they add. So the hack here is on the left side of the screen. When you're looking at that calendar availability on American's website, there's a tiny little drop-down box. It's so hidden that you really wouldn't notice it if you didn't know it was there. But you can switch to look for just nonstop flights. And if you choose routes that are operated by either Air Berlin or Finnair, you can see those routes and it pulls out all of the British Airways because all those are going to connect in London. So if you look at JFK to Berlin or Chicago to Berlin and you choose the nonstop option, you're going to be able to see a full month of availability, and the only days that are lit up for those Saver Business or Saver First Class awards are going to be on Finnish Air. So those are going to be a really good option. For Finnair, you're going to want to look for availability from JFK to Helsinki or Chicago to Helsinki. The next sort of interesting one from oneworld is Iberia. Now, Iberia is a little bit tricky because they don't show up on the American Airlines website. They're just not online. That makes it harder for people to find them, but it's also a little bit of a benefit if you're willing to hustle a little bit because those aren't online, not so many people know about them, and it's a lot harder. It's a little bit more work, and so a lot more of those seats go untaken, and that's a really good opportunity to grab some business or first class availability. So for Iberia, you want to look at routes from Chicago O'Hare, Boston and New York to Madrid. There's also routes from LAX and Miami to Madrid, but they're not quite as valuable. A lot of those tend to be sold out. They don't offer a lot of award seats, but especially Boston and Chicago are good. New York can also be good to Madrid. So check those out. If you don't want to spend the time calling American Airlines, you can also check Iberia's availability in premium cabins by getting on Expert Flyer. It is a paid service, but they have a 5-day free trial. So if you're just looking for one trip, you can avoid paying that $10 a month and do some searches in the first 5 days to really see what's out there. So I encourage you guys to do that. And then again, if you run out of that free trial and you don't want to pay, you can always call American up and ask them to check those routes on Iberia and see if they're available. Last but not least, we're going to talk about SkyTeam. Getting to Europe, Virgin Atlantic has some pretty decent business class awards that you can book with Delta Sky Miles. And one tip here is that you want to make sure to book this as a round trip because booking 2 one-ways is going to cost a bunch more in fuel surcharges. So for whatever reason, if you're originating in the United States, they don't levy the fuel surcharges. But if you book from the US to Europe and then you book another one-way from Europe back, that return trip is going to have pretty heavy charges. So make sure to book it as a round trip if at all possible. And I don't really know which routes. They didn't talk too much about that, but I know there's some decent availability because a lot of people were talking about using Delta miles on Virgin Atlantic. So I encourage you guys to check that out if Europe is on your list. I don't have a whole bunch of information about Australia, but I did want to bring up one bright spot, and that is that December and February, basically December through February, with the exception of the 2 weeks right around Christmas, there's a ton of availability on Delta.com. I actually saw this just last week because we've got a couple of customers that are looking for flights. It's not going to work past the 15th or, from the 15th to basically the 1st, it's all blocked out. But if you can leave before the 15th, if you want to spend Christmas with family and Australia, it's obviously going to be beautiful weather compared to a lot of places in the northern US, and you can find that availability right on Delta.com. Fuel surcharges are pretty minimal, and you're looking for 80,000 miles each way, so that's going to be the lowest price. Remember, Delta a little while back eliminated their award chart, so you can't actually see what the lowest prices are, but as far as I know, 80,000 is the lowest it gets, and that's what you want to be looking for. I know there was a lot of Saver awards at 80,000 at least a week week ago when I took a look at this for a couple of customers. So definitely check that out. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. The international jam this week is a New York-based producer called Blockhead, and this one's another all-instrumental, but I really dig the track. This one is called Insomniac Olympics. I hope you guys enjoy. I will be back next week checking in from Salvador, Brazil. Once again, wherever you guys are, travel safe and travel cheap. Don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Erik or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.